So, after my dad passed, he left me his old Rolex. It was more than just a watch, it was like having a piece of him with me. I wasn't about to sell it, despite the money it was worth. Instead, wearing it made me feel like he was still looking out for me. Life had been rough, and I desperately needed a break from everything, so I figured a solo camping trip would help me find some peace. I hit up this massive camping store to get some gear. There was this guy there, not your typical salesperson. He was rugged, with a serious survivalist vibe, more intimidating than your average clerk. Broad-shouldered, with a stern look that made you think he'd wrestled more than a few wild animals in his time. His help was practical, though, and he smelled distinctly of pine and earth, like he'd just come back from the wilderness himself. He walked me through the essentials: tent, flashlight, matches, and mace, because you never know what you'll encounter out there. He showed me this robust, easy setup tent that looked like it could withstand a hurricane. His hands moved with practiced ease as he demonstrated the setup, making sure I knew my way around the gear before I left. The next day, I packed everything into my truck and drove off to the closest national park. The journey was a mix of anticipation and relief, the landscape shifting from urban sprawl to sprawling forests and open skies. By the time I reached my chosen spot, nestled in a secluded part of the park, the serenity of nature had already begun to soothe my restless mind. My camping spot was perfect. A little clearing encircled by dense trees with a breathtaking view of the distant mountains. The river nearby hummed a continuous lullaby. Setting up the tent felt like a breeze, and soon I had a fire crackling away, dinner sizzling over the flames, the comforting routine of camp life easing the lingering sadness from my thoughts. But as dusk turned to night, the peace was shattered. Rustling from the edge of the clearing grew into unmistakable sounds of someone moving through the brush. I froze, every sense heightened. This was no animal. The steps were too deliberate, too heavy. I shone my flashlight toward the noise, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal nothing but shifting shadows. Then, a heavy step and a muttered curse. Definitely human. Heart racing, I called out, "Who's there? I have a gun." No response, just the sound of hurried movement retreating. I barely slept, the noises haunting the edges of my consciousness. As dawn painted the sky in pale hues, a familiar creak sounded. The door of my truck. I paused, scared, but the adrenaline flooded me, and I scrambled out of the tent, coming face to face with what shocked me, the survivalist from the store. We both froze, sizing each other up in the dim morning light. He looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see him, his eyes wide, his posture tense. Neither of us moved. The air was thick with uncertainty, each waiting for the other to make a move. The silence stretched on, filled only by the distant call of a bird and the soft rustle of the morning breeze. After what felt like an eternity, he slowly backed away, his eyes never leaving mine. I stood my ground, the Rolex on my wrist somehow comforting, a silent reminder of my dad's presence. The survivalist turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving me with a pounding heart and a million questions. Later, checking my gear, I found a small GPS tracker tucked away. Had he planted it? Was this all some bizarre game to him? The encounter left me unnerved, yet grateful for the solitude that followed. The watch, my dad's watch, seemed to pulse with a protective energy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow it had kept me safe in that strange, tense moment at dawn.